Have you ever wondered how it's all going to end? The world? It's a question that has fascinated people for, well, forever. But what if there was a detailed roadmap, a step-by-step guide to the final days? Well, today we're going to explore one of those maps, a very specific theological timeline known as Reformed Premillennialism.
So, how does it all unfold? We're not talking about vague predictions or mysterious prophecies here. The framework we're looking at today lays out an incredibly specific chronological sequence of events. It's like a countdown clock to the end of the age as we know it. So here's how we're going to tackle this. First, we'll explain the framework itself. Then, we'll dive into the final, pivotal 7 years. From there, we'll look at what happens to believers during this time. Then comes the climax, the big return and resurrection. And finally, we'll explore the new era that follows. Okay, first things first. Before we jump into the timeline with all the action, we've got to understand the name on our map, Reformed Premillennialism. What in the world does that actually mean?
So, at its heart, this is a system for interpreting biblical prophecy about the end times. Let's just break down that name real quick. Millennialism refers to a 1,000-year kingdom. Simple enough. Premillennialism just means that Christ's return happens before that 1,000-year period starts. And Reformed connects it all to a specific tradition of Protestant theology. So, you put it all together, and you get a very detailed timeline for what followers believe is the fulfillment of God's ultimate plan.
And here we go. This is where the clock officially starts ticking. According to this framework, the end doesn't just happen out of the blue. Nope. It's triggered by one very specific global event that kicks off a 7-year countdown.
And that trigger? It's not a natural disaster or some cosmic event. It's political. The idea is that a super charismatic global leader, who the text calls the Beast, brokers a major 7-year peace treaty. The very moment that deal is signed, the final 7-year period, often called the tribulation, officially begins.
Now, this 7-year period is really a tale of two halves. The first 3.5 years are all about this huge mission of prophecy. But you see that midpoint? That's where everything flips. A period of intense persecution, called the First Woe, kicks off the final brutal 3.5 years. This is the Great Tribulation, where the beast's authority becomes absolute. So you might be wondering, where do believers, the saints as they're often called, fit into all this chaos? Well, their experience isn't the same for everyone. In fact, according to this view, their paths split dramatically, and it all hinges on one key factor, their spiritual preparedness. In that first half of the tribulation, a really unique group takes center stage, the 144,000. These are described as sealed servants of God. You can almost think of them as a divinely protected task force of prophets. Their whole job is to deliver God's message during this chaotic time, and they are completely shielded from harm while they do it. This right here captures the great division that happens right at that 7-year midpoint. When the Great Tribulation begins, believers are split into two groups. Those who are considered prepared are taken to a place of protection, called a yibi ko, shielded from what's coming. But the unprepared believers, they're left behind to face the full force of the beast's persecution. So how does this all end? After 7 years of turmoil, prophecy, and persecution, the tribulation doesn't just fade away. It builds to this incredible, dramatic, and decisive climax. And the sequence of events is really specific. As you can see, it all starts with something called the first resurrection. Now, this isn't everybody. It's exclusively for the martyrs who were killed for their faith during the tribulation. They are raised to form a heavenly army, and it's only after this army is assembled that Christ returns to earth, leading them to defeat the beast and put an end to his global reign for good. With the conflict over and the beast defeated, the world doesn't just, end. Instead, it gets remade. A totally new era begins, and it's defined by two massive events: a 1,000-year kingdom on earth, and then a final, ultimate judgment. 1,000. This number is huge. It represents the millennial kingdom, a 1,000-year period where Christ is said to reign directly on a restored and peaceful earth. The big question is, who actually gets to live in this kingdom? This chart breaks down the new social structure perfectly. At the very top, you've got the resurrected martyrs. They're in glorified, immortal bodies, and they rule as kings alongside Christ. Then you have the surviving saints, both the protected ones and the ones who endured, living as citizens in their normal physical bodies. And finally, you have the wicked, who have been judged and removed from the earth entirely.
But believe it or not, the story still isn't over. After those 1,000 years are up, the final act begins. There's a last resurrection, which is then followed by the ultimate great white throne judgment for everyone who has ever lived. Out of this comes a final perfect reality called the New Jerusalem, which believers see as the absolute completion of God's plan. You know, after that whole incredible cosmic journey, the source material really boils it all down to this one simple, powerful idea. The entire epic narrative is framed as a call for endurance, a massive test of belief, all summarized by this quote, "Here is the patience and the faith of the saints." And this leaves us with one last but really crucial question. Why? Why map out the future in such incredible detail? Well, for people who hold this view, it isn't just some theological puzzle to be solved. It's a practical roadmap, a guide that's meant to shape how they live their lives today, all in preparation for what they believe is a very specific tomorrow.